more similar to how Baltimore runs the ball. And the Browns, when they played Baltimore, I believe Baltimore ran the ball 44 times and the Browns held them to 3.2 yards or 3.6 yards a carry. So the Browns did a great job stopping the run against a Baltimore team. And I think that's going to be closer to what they're going to be here. The Browns' issues when it comes to run defense isn't that the defensive line can't hold their ground as much as the defensive line can be easily misdirected. But not everybody has that in their playbook. And you can't, that's not something you could just throw in there. It's not Madden where you could just sprinkle in these plays and then just run them. You know, there's going to be a couple of plays they're going to run that are definitely going to gash the Browns, but like they can't just change their whole running philosophy overnight just to beat the Browns. They won't do that. So that's why I have some faith in the Browns defense to hold up. Now, Josh Allen, that's a whole different beast. So this is such a weird game to try to prepare for this week. The Browns versus the Bills. We're talking about, is it going to be a Snow Bowl? Who's going to be available? With the Bills didn't even practice today because of the weather conditions that they're dealing with. What I can say is that when I looked at Buffalo, New York, and look, it's different, right? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but that stadium that they have is nowhere near actual Buffalo, New York, right? Ralph Wilson Stadium, I keep calling it that. It's something different now. But Ralph Wilson Stadium's actually, like, I think in a different county than Buffalo. And that's why, like, if you look at Buffalo's weather reports, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any snow on Sunday. But that stadium, again, is nowhere near the city of Buffalo, relatively speaking. It's not like Cleveland, where, like, if you look at the weather report for Cleveland, that's what the weather's going to be. But you have to go all the way to, like, what, Orchard Park? That's where that stadium is. And if we look at the weather report for that, that ends up being very different than the city of Buffalo's weather, because I believe they're closer to the lake. Either way, there's a chance that this could be a very windy game. Like, that's almost guaranteed that the wind's going to be crazy in this game, which is going to take away the throwing just because of that. And then it could be even harder to see. There might be humidity. There might be snow. Something happening, right? Like that's what the weather report has been. It's going to be cold. It's going to be windy. Wind plus cold, by the way. We don't talk about this enough. And I know this is a little bit of a tangent, but we really don't talk about this enough. People look at the temperature. They never look at the wind. The wind is so much more important when it comes to how cold you actually going to feel than the temperature. It could be 35 degrees right now, but if the wind is like 2 miles per hour, you're going to be chilling in that 35 degrees. Like, you might have a jacket on, but you might not need gloves. You don't need nothing to cover your face. If it's 25 degrees and it's 20-mile-per-hour winds, let me tell you something. That's going to be one of them days where your ears are going to be super red. Everything going to feel like it's going to fall off your body. You feel like you can't grab nothing hard because your hand's going to just break apart. And there's no solution for cold and windy. And that's what it's guaranteed to be. It's going to be sub 30 and it's going to be plus 15-mile-per-hour wind. So it's going to be pretty nasty to play in that. And then if there's snow on top of that, I mean, like, the good news is that with the precipitation percentages only go down for the week in Orchard Park, right? So it's like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it's pretty high, and it gets all the way down like 16% by the time we get to Sunday. But again, this is Wednesday. I'm recording this video and talking about it, so it could change. Either way, it's going to be nasty up there in Orchard Park, New York / Buffalo. And that's going to make for an interesting game, because I think we all felt like, hey, if Josh Allen is unhindered, if Josh Allen is healthy going into this game, oh man, we're in trouble. And we still could be in trouble. The Buffalo Bills are that good of a football team, but it's going to be interesting to see how they have to adjust, because one, Josh Allen is not healthy. He is hurt still. Like, he is not going to play. He's going to play clearly, but he's clearly not been healthy. the last couple of weeks if you look at like how his play is dipped. And then we can look at it. They have health issues going on right now in Buffalo. They got a lot of things going on preparing for this game. They can't even practice right now. And this is something that's interesting that leans towards the Browns' favor, at least you would think, because the Browns' chance to win this game is for this to be a game where running the ball is the most efficient way to move the ball on offense for both teams. And I'm a little bit concerned about that, given that this run defense looked terrible last week versus Miami. But the reasons I'm not as concerned as I would be about the run defense this week as I was last week, I'll explain. But I think running the ball, if this becomes one of those run the ball games because you can't really do anything else, this leans closer to the Browns' favor. I wouldn't favor the Browns in this game, no matter what. But it does lean in the Browns' favor. I mean, I guess if it was Case Keenum in a snow game, I'm favoring the Browns. But nonetheless, this becomes very interesting for the Browns because they have the better run game. They have the better offensive line. Wyatt Teller came back. JOK came back. So they're going to be able to defend the run a bit better. And I think the biggest elephant in the room is the Browns' run defense. They will be better this week just because the way the Dolphins run the ball is not something that a team can replicate on a week-to-week basis. That's something that has to be a part of your system. The Dolphins are the type of team to run 45% out of play action. They run a ton of misdirection. So when they needed to run misdirection in the run game last week, it wasn't that difficult for them to implement it in. A team like Buffalo, on a week where they can't practice that much, they're not going to be able to throw in a ton of misdirection. Their run plays are their run plays, and they run the ball more similar to how Baltimore runs the ball. And the Browns, when they played Baltimore, I believe Baltimore ran the ball 44 times, and the Browns held them to 3.2 yards or 3.6 yards a carry. So the Browns did a great job stopping the run against a Baltimore team, and I think that's going to be closer to what they're going to be here. The Browns' issues when it comes to run defense isn't that the defensive line can't hold their ground as much as the defensive line can be easily misdirected. But not everybody has that in their playbook. And that's not something you could just throw in there. It's not Madden where you could just sprinkle in these plays and then just run them. There's going to be a couple of plays they're going to run that are definitely going to gash the Browns, but like they can't just change their whole running philosophy overnight just to beat the Browns. They won't do that. So that's why I have some faith in the Browns defense to hold up. Now, Josh Allen, that's a whole different beast, right? That's going to be up to Miles. Miles and Jadeveon, that's where they earn their money. Because let's be real, I'm not trusting Tommy Togiai to tackle Josh Allen by themselves. I'm not trusting Jordan Elliott or Taven Bryan to do it. The only two people who I should expect and trust to tackle Josh Allen are Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett, because quite frankly, those are the only two players on their defensive line that are the caliber of player that can tackle Josh Allen. Straight up. Every other guy is just another big dude that misses a tackle on Josh Allen. Those two should be different, though. Don't end up on this highlight reel. And as far as the defensive game plan goes, I don't think it has to be super complicated. I think you don't have to try to scheme up a magical plan. You can stay in cover 2 if you want. You can play heavy boxes if you want. But what you have to do is win. I wouldn't even say win, but be present on the line of scrimmage. Have good linebacking play this week. I know you're getting JOK back. I don't know who else you're getting back, but we can't be running out there with Tony Fields and Jordan. Again, that was ridiculous. But you just got to tackle well this week. You have to be disciplined. I feel confident in the corner's ability to hold up downfield for the entirety of the game versus the Bills. Not saying they're going to shut down Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis, but I don't think they're going to be having these Jeff Wilson type explosions where they get like 200 yards or close to 150 or something crazy like that against the secondary. I think the secondary can hold their own, especially a guy like Martin Emerson in a game where it could be conditions could limit the team's ability to go downfield and enable your ability to be more aggressive. So I like the Browns secondary in that kind of a situation. But again, this depends on which Browns defense shows. If the Browns defense that I think is probably going to show up that played in Baltimore shows up, we're good. If anything like last week shows up, we know where we're at. We know where we're at with this defense. Offensively, I mean, do I need to give you a 5-page explanation on what this offense should do this week if it's going to be a windy, snowy game on the road against Buffalo? Play their game. You know what I mean? You're going to throw the ball at least 15, 20 times. That's just going to happen. You got to do that to keep the defense honest. But run the ball. Run the ball a lot, right? Like, I'm not saying run the ball with Nick Chubb a lot. I'm just saying run the ball a lot. It could be Nick Chubb. It could be Kareem Hunt. It could be, what's the name? Dearness Johnson. It could be Dearness Johnson, whoever you want it to be. Run the ball. And get yourself in position to run the ball often, right? A lot of the times we talk about running the ball, we think it's just a button that you hit. Run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. You got to get yourself in position to do that, right? Which means the running backs have to do a good job of making sure they get 4 to 5 yards a carry at the very least, right? Because when you get into 2nd and 5, you can run the ball all day consistently, right? If you get into 2nd and 5 consistently, you can run the ball whenever you want. If you run the ball and you get into 2nd and 8, we're having to throw on 3rd and 9. You see what I mean? The running backs have to do a good job of getting those 5 yards per carry. 5 yards on first down means you can run the ball for the rest of the downs. 1 or 2 yards on first down or 2nd down means that we got to throw the ball more now, right? And we can only go with so much of these 2-yard carries. The last couple of weeks, I'm just going to say it, run game's been pretty disappointing. Nick Chubb was disappointing last week. I felt like people aren't saying it. He had a bad game. Nick Chubb had a bad game. I don't think the Dolphins stopped him as much as he stopped himself in that game. He's Nick Chubb. So like a bad game is not that big of a deal because he's still one of the best running backs in football. But he had a bad game. He made some cuts he shouldn't have. He was lackluster on some cuts. He was late some areas. He wasn't playing good. He just wasn't. I don't think the Dolphins did anything special to stop you. You get Wyatt Teller back. That should help you. I hope you can get David Njoku back for a game like this because, boy, would that be huge. But you get Wyatt Teller back. And even with Wyatt Teller back, that helps you because you can put Yodi Freehold in some of these tackle-eligible situations so you're not just rolling out there with Harrison Bryant trying to block all the time. And you'll be in a better position. So that's good news. But the plan is relatively simple. The ability to execute it, that's the hard part this week, right? The Buffalo Bills are not a very complicated team, but they're not a very complicated team because they don't have to be very complicated. They're a beatable team. You can beat the Buffalo Bills. They have been beaten 3 times. They're not an unstoppable beast. And they're not very complicated. And the way you beat them is not complicated. But forcing them to play the way that you have to play to beat them is the most complicated thing in the world. It's going to be a tough game for the Browns. I'm not predicting victory. But I am hopeful that they can put themselves in position to play their game. But the Browns are in the third quarter of this game. They're able to play their football game like they want to, running the ball, clock control, Nick Chubb, high in yards per carry. We're in a good spot. If it's anything, if we're sitting at halftime again, hoping that they don't get that the Buffalo Bills don't score in their first possession and we go down by 10, we're in trouble. But that's the game plan, man. It's not complicated this week. There is nothing complicated about this week. And I know people are going to be in the comment section, well, Kevin's going to make it's not complicated. The Browns aren't going to make this complicated. The Buffalo Bills aren't going to make this complicated. It's about execution at the end of the day. Nobody's overthinking this. Kevin Stefanski is not going to overthink this. And Sean McDermott is not going to overthink this. There's not much to overthink about. This is going to be about will to win, effort, and who can win in the trenches. And boy, this is a big week for Wyatt Teller and Joe Bitonio and Jedrick Wills and whoever's playing right tackle this week. And then on the other side, obviously, for Myles Garrett, Deion Dawkins on the Bills, and all these dudes. It's going to be a big week. The Buffalo Bills aren't the greatest run blocking team in football. If this becomes a run the ball game, it's in your advantage. Well, not in your advantage, but it leans better towards your direction than if it weren't. But that's the game plan, man. Don't expect a complicated game this week. It will be very unsophisticated if the weather holds to what we think the weather's going to be. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Y'all have a great day. Have a good night.